All right, we are live. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're at in the world. I know that this is a little bit different than the way we've been doing it, where we watch a video first. So give it some time to for people to show up, because it is right at noon right now, my time, and get the chat window up on my laptop so that I can see what's going on here. So we're gonna give it, I'll give it a couple minutes for you guys to roll in. Hi! Wait, I saw someone pop up. Oh, hi, Hugo. So, yeah, it's definitely, I know, I've been playing with formats the last month or so as far as just like the best engagement, best way for me to engage with you guys, best way to share information. Hi, Kaleflower! So, hopefully we'll see a couple more people pop into here. And yay, thank you. I might actually add you, Boldly Grow. Let's see. Yeah, I'll add you as a mod. Because I'm not sure if Ralph's coming today. I haven't heard from him. But it always is good to have a few extra people to keep the comments cleaned up. So part of the reason that I have moderators on these chats is because I want you guys to have really useful conversations in the comment section, and not just be, like all of the sort of comment sections you see on the internet generally. So hopefully that helps. Feel free to reach out if for some reason you think that you've gotten booted. The mods around here do a really good job of being proactive, so if you're saying things that are off topic, then there's a good chance you're going to get a mute or a boot for that, just so you know, like, it's a fair warning. Hi everyone. Okay, so there's people popping in, that's great. Then we can get started here in the next minute or so. I hope that everyone had a great week last week. Again, sorry that I wasn't around. I was at a conference down in Austin, actually San Marcos, so it was even further south than Austin. Learning a little bit more about farming and getting the information that I need from like an infrastructural perspective to get this show, on the road and rolling along, because I've never started a farm before, so it's a little bit different than backyard gardening. I knew it would be, but I was up for the task challenge, whatever. So yeah, it's definitely interesting to see and learn what other farmers are doing. It's I'm kind of in a weird position here, because I'm definitely bigger than a backyard garden, right? So I'll make a video about this at some point, because I have tons of pictures to share with you guys that I found last week from my old garden in LA, but I basically went from 1,000 square feet to working on a farm that already had infrastructure in place and where I could say, hey, I need this for the gardens here, and I would get it, to having to figure out, how to budget and plan all of that and build soil totally from scratch on an acre. So it's a fun journey to share with you guys, because there are a lot of ups and downs, but I'm glad that you're along for the ride. Hi, all of these new people popping in. Yeah, we're here for Sunday chat, so hopefully you guys had a great week. Listening to, I'll just talk about the conference for half a minute, and then I'm going to get to questions, because we have tons of them, and I'm sure you guys have in chat. As always, if you have a question that you really, really want answers to and the chat's flying along, then feel free to send it as a super chat. There's a little button there at the bottom of your chat that looks like a $sign. I have had some people mention that they're not super happy that super chat takes a chunk of that contribution, but they gotta, keep the show running in the background. So if you're not happy with that, I can add a PayPal link too, but I always take questions on Instagram, on Patreon, on Facebook, so you can always submit them ahead of time and then catch this later. What does my shirt say? So this is a shirt, actually, this is a shirt that can be ordered, and maybe I'll get an order link up soon. I should have warned my sister-in-law that I'd wear it today, because she said, warn me before you wear it on YouTube. But they wanted me to come up with shirt designs, because she started a new shirt company called Burbale, and I can add the link to the comments for that as well. But so this is the design that I came up with, and it's basically my favorite pollinator families, and I was going to do a video about that as far as things that I like to plant to keep pollinator insects well fed year round, and also beneficial insects, also all of your integrated pest management. Like, those are the families I go for. So that's what's up with that shirt. Yeah, see? So Laza Glider has shown you exactly how Super Chat works, and thank you for that. So the conference I went to this past week, it really was more about larger scale farms. Most people have, 10, 20, 50, 100 acres or more that they're working on, and that's sort of the parameters they're thinking in. So I do like the size of a scale that I'm working with when it's 5 acres and really only 1 acre of fields, or just about 1 acre of field, because it feels like there's more relatable techniques that can be both scaled up and down. So yeah, it is a nerdy shirt, I know, but I love it, and people ask questions and I can't pronounce half the words on it properly when I'm thinking about it. So we're not gonna go there right now, but yeah. So the conference was good. I learned a lot. I learned what I need to say to the farm board here in order to get paperwork going and start being able to apply for the NRCS grants and whatnot. So I'm very hopeful about getting, stuff moving along here and getting this farm up and running so that we're actually producing stuff for the community as well as for the dinners that we're planning in the near future. My dad's really pumped about the greenhouse dinners, and obviously we have to do it when it cools off, but yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff in store. So just, cranking out the elbow grease at this point in time. I'm going to look at a few questions here in chat, and then we're going to hit some on the wall because there's a ton of them, and hopefully this won't go super long, but it probably will. So feel free to come and go as you need to. It will be recorded and you can play it back later. So hi everyone who's just popped in. Yay! What do you feed your pepper plants when they're not producing? So peppers might not be producing for a number of reasons. If it's very hot where you live right now, that could be a big part. Really, I have noticed that pollen for a lot of our summer crops tends to die back or not be as viable when we get over that 95, really 90 to 95 depending on the crop. And with peppers, it's kind of in that range. So if you're seeing really hot days, you could try to give them a little bit of shade, but to be honest, they're not going to produce until it cools back down for the most part. So, you could give them a, really well-balanced organic food or top dress them. I've given them, I want to say it was bone meal, yeah. I've given them bone meal to try and encourage flowering, but you're going to see flowers falling off if it's hot. So one, you have to look at what your weather's doing and then kind of go from there. Mine are producing, but they're in the shade, and they're just starting to produce because they're in the shade. And so if you can kind of plant so that you have, sun and shade crops, and it's the same crops, then you can kind of stretch your production across whatever the climate throws at you. So things are looking wilty in Texas, yeah. There's not a whole lot you're going to be able to do about that right now. Mulching, keeping them watered, like you said, Nick and Sack? And yeah, a lot of gardeners I've noticed in Texas are gearing up for a fall season or a fall push on the same crops that they planted earlier in the spring. So there's a lot of pruning back, just top dressing with food, adding, compost and mulch. Keeping them watered so they'll survive. Once we get through this heat wave, we may see production ramp back up, and if, depending on what part of Texas you're in, as long as you're not in the far west end or the far east end, but kind of, that whole center strip, you should get a second season. I think that we're probably not going to see massive cold until I want to say it's October, November, so we should have enough days for production. Don't rip anything out yet unless it's just completely dead. Yeah. Ooh, geez, East Mesa. So you must be in Arizona, because Mesa, I'm guessing. 112 is intense. We're definitely hundreds all week. Just, this week, next week, we're definitely going to be up in the hundreds here. So right now, it's just keeping things alive. There are some perennials, as far as strawberries and stuff in the woods that I'm looking at digging out and transplanting to the nursery. Just because it's a lot. I'm actually out of town for the next 2 weeks again, so trying to plan, how this is going to work, with you guys for the next 2 weeks, and I've got some ideas in store, so don't worry. But yeah, February in, you know, the upper north states. So if you live in a northern area and you just like frozen tundra, like we have the opposite problem in the desert west essentially. And there's just months where you can't do anything, but you need to be doing things because those are the growing seasons. So it's just keeping things watered, keeping them, you know, well mulched so the roots don't dry out, and you're like crossing your fingers, holding your breath. So rolling back through this. Okay, what's the plan for all the cedar wood you purchased? Oh, so if you saw, I'm gonna make sure, I'm trying to work with this, like making sure that it's not freezing, but it looks okay over here. So if you follow me on Instagram, you saw that my dad and I were loading a ton of cedar posts yeah, it was earlier last week, and then he went and picked up the rest of them earlier this week. And yeah, so we got like 400 cedar posts from Facebook classifieds for next to nothing. I think it was like $100 for the whole lot. And there's not really a plan. Like, we're always building stuff. And so part of it is to create just like really cool, you know, more rustic looking fences, because that's what he's into. It's really great just to have that much material on hand if we wanted to run a big fence somewhere, whether it's for livestock to keep them in or to keep other livestock out. Like, yeah, so part of it is I want to cut some up and do maybe some cordwood building. I think that would be a fun thing to play with. And also just, you know, to use to run trellises, to build arbors. Like, we have some creative plans in store as far as using the cedar posts, so we're not super worried about figuring out what to do. We really just like getting materials when they're cheap or free, and then figuring out how to incorporate them to not spend quite as much money on things that, you know, other people are getting rid of. I don't know how you guys are going to cope. Thank you for that the week after at my brother's house. And he has a garden, so there's going to be a video coming out of that for sure. Going into a space that, like, is, you know, I haven't messed with at all. So I'm excited. He said he's just... okay, I scrolled back too far. Do I know anything about black raspberries? I do not. I know that I want to grow them. I know that raspberries really struggle in so no. Okay, so MPPP, you have coyotes in your garden. I don't actually... I haven't dealt with that because I've always had dogs. So I had when I lived in California. Yeah, there's a little bit of lag right now. Sorry about that. I shut anything else off, and skunks and possums, but just kind of existed with them and made sure that my chickens were locked up every night so that they didn't get eaten. I'm gonna scroll through. Okay, I've like lost all of the whatever was going on here. So we'll see. There's some buffering happening. I don't know. It might be because I'm running 2 devices. I don't know. I unplugged the other stuff though. I might have to call the Wi-Fi company. But that's country internet, like I said before. So we're gonna go through some of these, and then we'll go from there. So I'm gonna grab these right here. They're really stuck to the wall today. By the way, I got a new coffee cup today. Or not today, last week. No rain, no flowers. And I really like it. It was a great present to come back to after the conference when I went to check my P.O. box, and then I found stuff from you guys. And I have a couple of things to share here, but I just wanted to show you that because I think it's so cute. So, this question, after you've been cutting and laying debris on your soil for nutrients, are you going to till it in and then put more on top again? So this is actually a question that I'm thinking a lot about right now as I get ready to get in fall cover crops, and then also do some earthworks on this field as far as working on better water retention. And currently the plan is to not till. There are things that may change that as we move forward, but the plan is to not till. I'm right now looking at putting down the cover crop seed once it cools off enough and we potentially have rain in the forecast. And so the plan is to put down the cover crop seed, to mow everything that's out there. So it's like lots of weeds and grasses and wild plants, some crop residue from the stuff that I did grow, and use that to cover it. And then I'm also another question up there, I know, so I'll get into that. And so I'm going to use that to top dress and start adding more nutrients to the soil, as well as I just signed up for a service called Chip Drop, where you go on site, you fill out a form. If you're able to accept, I think it's 20 yards. Yeah, it's 20 yards of, mulch, but it's like wood products, from arborists that may or may not be chipped well, may include logs. There might be a little bit of garbage, I don't know. But just getting the bulk of organic materials to kind of spread across where I'm putting down cover crops. And then we'll see, like if they germinate well with this method, then I'm not going to till. If they don't germinate well and it seems like it's hard packed and all the water's running off, then I may revisit, running a disc across the field. I don't really want to, because tilling creates further compaction, and so it's going to undo some of the work that I've been doing, and I want, to move forward rather than setting myself back X number of days or months or even years by, breaking up the soil tilt. So the plan there is to really use cover crops to do some tilling for me, like daikon radishes, like just a lot of different, things with very dense roots that will make their way into the soil and then decompose and leave those channels to increase infiltration. So that's kind of in the direction that that all of that's going. Let's see. Oh my god. Thank you, mods. I missed something there. So when I'm planting, is going to be based on when it starts to cool off and we have rain in the forecast. I'm not irrigating this field manually. It's a lot of work and it would require a lot more equipment. You're walking around with the hose literally all day, every day. That's not going to happen. So I'm really trying to plan it with the weather patterns and hoping to find a good window to get seeds in where we're going to have several days of rain and slightly cooler temperatures so that those seeds can germinate, get roots down. I may supplement water at some point if I need to, but the hope is that by leaving so much organic matter on top of the soil, that's going to help to keep the water in the soil while those seeds are germinating. So that's the plan. As far as, I saw someone say buckwheat or yeah, not mowing, I definitely get a lot of mites. So I've been covered in bites for the entire summer, but that's part of the process. Eventually I'm hoping that they'll kind of die back as I get rid of the invasive species. As far as buckwheat or clover goes, I'm planning on doing both, but not both for fall. I'm going to do clover for fall because it doesn't really tolerate heat super well, so it's fall and spring, trying to get it into a pattern of seeding itself and then the seeds emerging as necessary. Buckwheat I would do in spring just because it seems to do a little bit better with the heat. It'll still die off once it gets hot, but I haven't had great germination for buckwheat in fall moving into winter. Like it'll germinate and then the growth seems stunted, so it doesn't seem like it's worth the seed price. I saw something else and I missed it, so yeah. Okay. What do you think of Texas policy not mowing along roadways until wildflowers have finished blooming? I think it's a really good idea. I think that letting plants, like this is something that we need as a community to start thinking about when we're looking at large-scale land care, is to consider the life cycle of plants and the plants that we want to exist in those spaces. It makes sense to allow them to live through that entire life cycle, which includes producing seed, so that you get more of the plants you want the following year. If you're doing it based on your schedule and not based on the plant schedule, then you're going to eventually shoot yourself in the foot, because some plants that we don't want in the invasive space, like they're still going to produce and they're going to find ways to produce more seed over a longer season, whereas a lot of the things like wildflowers and some of the native species are really one and done. And if they don't have that and you break that cycle, then you don't get them the following season, or you get a lot less. So I'm a fan of it. I know that it's a fire hazard. I wish that people would stop throwing cigarettes out their windows and whatever else they do to start fires, because it doesn't need to be a fire hazard. I think that it would be useful to look into something like crimping them down once they've produced seed, to have ecologists go out and be like, okay, this patch is good, like let's crimp them down so that it's a little bit less of a fire hazard and it's not this tall like tinderbox essentially of brown plants setting seed. But I think that it's incremental steps, and it's better to do good and then try and do better. I'm a fan of that. I'm going to go over here. So, okay, that's good to know, Rehoboth Farm, about the chip drop, that I may occasionally get a glove or a few water bottles. Someone said, oh, it was on their website, I think, that they said, if you find things like shoes or gloves or tools, then in there. I was like, okay, well, it's good compost, but it'd be super, a little bit, you know, alarming to find a body inside of your chip drop, for sure. I don't know that I'd sign back up. So how do you first prep a field when it's just weeds? There's a number of ways to go about this. Me personally, because I'm doing a much larger space now, approaching it a little differently than when I do a smaller space. So if I'm doing a space that's under 1,000 square feet, which would be most gardens that people are installing in their backyards, I will typically put down, I go the lasagna method to some extent, and I put down, you know, those layers of cardboard and newspaper just to try and smother out the weeds. I'm not a big fan of doing plastic. I think that when you solarize your soil, that you kill off as much good stuff as bad stuff, and the bad stuff tends to have a much easier time, like, kind of moving back into that space. And so I'll put down something to blanket out the weeds, and then I just really pile up the materials on top of that. So, I mean, we're talking several inches of compost and amendments. We're talking a couple inches of mulch. Like, really get it to a point where things are not going to outgrow, the weeds will not outgrow whatever you're putting on top of them in the time that it takes them to usually try. There are things that will get around it. There's some Bermuda grass and briars. Those, it's really good. Oh, that was the other thing, when you're trying to choke out the weeds, it's really good to just like completely raise it to the ground. And so you want to get it down to the root level where they don't have these sprouts that have the energy ready to start growing up through whatever medium you give them, but instead it's having to produce those sprouts again. And so hopefully the amount of time it takes for your weeds to get back through whatever you've put on top is more than they're capable of actually tolerating, and they'll die off. So that's how I approach it. There are still weeds that make their way through. Briars will definitely do it. I do not ever use straight nitrogen to kill the weeds. I don't believe in throwing off the balance that much just because something annoys me. I tend to grow with weeds. They, for the most part, have offered a really good soil cover, so I'm not having to mulch stuff as much. I'll chop and drop them in place. If they're too close to a crop, I might dig them out in that spot. I have seen the grasses that spread by rhizomes do tend to compete a little with crops, but for the most part, other things you'd consider weeds like clover and dandelions and you know, things that they're not causing trouble. They're actually helping build the soil in that space. So I definitely encourage you to be able to at least try to identify what's in that space and then see how it fits into your ecosystem before deciding, like, I need to put all of this here. Yeah, just like figure out how it works in your ecosystem no matter what size of a space you're working on, because that's going to essentially make or break. Oh no, I think we froze again. The TV Wi-Fi. I don't know why it would be pinging though. I'm guessing I'm probably just like overloading bandwidth for country internet. That's just the way this works. But yeah, so I really encourage you to figure out what plants are there first. And even if they're weeds, like figure out like, is it serving a purpose in this space? And then go about killing them and figuring out how to manage and work with them. There are very few things I kill anymore as far as kill for the sake of killing. It really depends on how it fits into my ecosystem. And I know it's a lot more work mentally, initially, but long term, it's a lot less stress gardening. So once you start seeing these cycles work themselves out, you're like, ah, why did I ever do it the other way? Like, that's so annoying. So, okay, cool. So there's a material called Sunbelt that you can use to tarp, but it doesn't have the felt backing, and you can roll it up and reuse. That's great to know. I'm so like about plastic and stuff. like buying more and bringing more in as far as like covering the soil to warm it up or to extend seasons. I'm still like mentally figuring out how this stuff is going to work. So yeah, I know. I'm hoping, Tim, that it's popped, like that everything has ironed itself back out. I'm gonna have to call the Wi-Fi company and probably upgrade, which is annoying, but they were saying that it should work, and then we're gonna see like how this buffering thing works out. I might have to give them a call and pay $10 more a month. I don't know. So we're going to take this next question. Are you planning to overwinter your chilies? So yeah, some of them, if they survive the rest of the month, I'm really, really hoping to dig a few up and throw them in the greenhouse, just because I love having a greenhouse full of plants. That is the living room to the shed that I'm working on remodeling, which I'm going to be getting into more as it starts to cool off here, because it's 120 degrees in there right now. But in the winter, the greenhouse is glorious. It's like 90 degrees in the day when there's, or like 80 degrees in the day when there's like 40 degrees outside. Yeah, exactly. Of course they'll be overwintered. I definitely, I'm definitely going to be moving. I think someone had said, oh yeah, what am I growing during the winter and any greenhouse plans? So there's always greenhouse plans. I like being surrounded by plants at all times whenever possible, and so I haven't worked effectively with the greenhouse in Texas through the winter yet. This one wasn't finished, I want to say, it wasn't finished until like March or April. It was after I got back, so it must have been April. And yeah, I'd like to see, how does it function, figure out, if I need to do any heating and whatnot. I'm going to be doing some winter sowing as well, which I might start in there depending on how cold it ends up getting, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. I have some tropicals and pots and whatnot that have to be moved in, and I think most of the figs will get moved in just so I don't have to wait for them to grow back from the base, and they're still in pots. They haven't gone out to the woods yet, so definitely we'll be moving greenhouse notes back in there when it cools off. It's going to be exciting. Yeah, exactly, of course they will be. So yeah, when we're talking about rototilling, when we're talking about killing weeds, we're talking about the same problem, right? Is that we're potentially harming a lot of the microorganisms in our soil by these practices that we do for our own convenience. It's not for the sake of, what the soil needs or what those plants need. It's for what we need. And I think considering what the ecosystem needs and that's what's supporting us, is that soil microbiome. And so if we're not supporting it back, then we're going to run into a lot of problems, both in gardening and in health. So whenever we think about how we're going to be impacting and interacting with our landscape, those are things that we definitely need to keep in mind. Like, is this for my own convenience, or is this going to benefit everything that's involved? And I know it's annoying. Like, I'm working with briars all day, guys. So I have them popping up through the pepper garden, and I just keep slicing them back at the soil. And it really is like once every 3 weeks that I have to do that. Like, it's not a big deal. And eventually those tubers will give up, or they will be large and harvestable. Like, that's kind of where I'm at with it. But I'm not going to, douse them in horticulture vinegar for my own convenience, because that doesn't make sense to me. Plus, like, there's so many insects that like to eat the greens, so I use them as a trap crop. It's fantastic. Like, it's less work for me. It's just that mental reframing so that you can get into a headspace where you start to accept, that we're living with nature. Yeah, exactly. So tilling can be useful, but it does also bring up weed seeds. That's a great point. And part of why I'm on the fence with the field again as far as tilling, because there were a lot of really great native plants and wildflower seeds that did come up, but there were also a lot of weed seeds. So trying to avoid that, we're looking and seeing like what the pioneer species are here, and then working with those. And if I have to go around, with a fork in the spring and dig out things that are invasive that I don't want to spread more, then I'll do that. But it's an acre, and again, if you have 100 acres, like, you have to approach the problems a little bit differently. But my goal is to build soil and a really healthy soil microbiome so that the food I'm pulling out not only tastes great, but is also great for me and for anyone that I share it with. And that's how I'm going to approach all of these problems as far as that works. Yeah. Of course, in the comments, like, you guys sharing lots of great references. I love it. I like to go back and read through them after we're done, just because there's so much I miss. But every so often they pop up here on my phone screen, and then I can see them too. Okay, so we were talking about my plans as far as the field and how, hey Ralph, and how I'm not going to till, and I'm planning on mowing and using that to, yeah, it is a miracle we have electricity. I get distracted easily, you guys. But so, yeah, how I'm not going to till right now, and I'm going to mow and hope that crop residue and weed residue and the algae that I'm pulling from the pond and all of these things will help to get my cover crops basically, watered in and going and enough to cover them so that I don't have to cover them in soil by tilling it in. One of the things that's been going around lately that I wanted to touch on just briefly is that it is summer, it is hot, there's a lot of stuff in our water, and I've seen an article making the rounds, had a few friends send it to me, about dogs dying. I know, like, bummer right in the middle of this. But dogs dying from pond water that has cyanobacteria in it. And I read about this quick test that you could do to, if you have dogs that are regularly swimming in a body of water, if you have one on your property, to see that it's not really present, or it's not present at all in your water. And so basically what you do is, and I'm happy to say, this is the one I did last night, and I think that we're out of the woods right now and I can let my dogs keep playing in the disgusting water. But so what you do, and this probably, well, maybe we'll get to focus, is you get a scoop of the water from the edge of the pond, wherever your dogs would be playing in it, and then you let it sit in your fridge overnight, and in the morning, supposedly, you'll have a layer. If there's the cyanobacteria in your water, you'll have like a ring around the top that's fluorescent, that's like a bluish green. And we didn't get that, so I'm hoping that means there's not any, because they love playing in it and drinking it, and I don't want to have to keep them out, but I will, because I also want them to stay alive, even if they drive me crazy. Yeah, but so all that regular algae just settles to the bottom of the jar. And so I thought that was cool to try. Would have been cooler if I could show you the blue ring, but not really, because that would mean that we had a massive problem. One of the things that I've been looking into a lot over the last week or two, thinking about as far as amendments for the field, because I'm running out of weeds to chop and drop that aren't brown and crunchy, is there's a ton of algae in the pond, and I grabbed some to show you so you know what I'm talking about. And so we've got this plant, this algae plant. I think it's algae. It might be a type of plant. If you know, correct me in the chat, because I don't actually know what it's called. This is it, and it's like not crunchy state. But so there's a ton of algae that's growing along the banks of this pond. We're downstream from a pasture that has longhorns in it a lot. And so you got nitrates and nitrites and I think phosphorus, and I don't know, I was reading about this, and I gotta read it a few times in order for it to stick. But one of the things that kind of crossed my mind was, why not harvest that algae out of the pond if it's sucking, the oxygen or whatever out of the water, and it's raising the pH of the water, and there's all of these things that algae does. But it also cleans all of that stuff out of the water in the process. And so it's like, why not harvest this for fertilizer for the field? And so I started digging into that. Turns out that there's that holds some water, pun intended, that idea holds some water. And so so that's where I'm at with that. I really like it because it doesn't look like it's going to be persistent, to be honest. Like when you get into the drier bits, like it's very crumbly and it basically turns into a powder. But I think I can approach this in two ways, right? Where you can pull it and use it, kind of as top dressing to add to spots that don't have a whole lot of biomass. So there's empty spots in the field where nothing's growing. So it's like I can help coat that and make sure that it's more effectively covered. You can potentially turn it into biochar really fast, which I already have trees I'm doing that with, but it's an idea. You can also, I have some in the compost pile just to kind of get it started again, like harvesting some, drying it, pulverizing it, and keeping it in a bucket to use as a top dressing and amendment moving into the next seasons, so that I always have some natural, like, closed loop, local source of fertilizer. I mean, I'm going to test it once I get that far and see, like, if it's actually capable of doing the things I want it to do, but it's just another reminder to look around at the resources that you have nearby and work with those things, because they exist in your environment for a reason. I like to think that, at least. So going back to the deep weed seeds. So with deep weed seeds, I'm going to see if we... I want to answer this one first, actually. But I think we might have frozen again. I'm so glad that you guys are so patient with my connection right now. I think it is time for a faster one. I was told that the one I signed up for would be enough, but I'm going to have to give them a phone call this week, because clearly it's not. So we are going back. I'm going to roll back up here. It looks like that refreshed. So the question was, would deep weed seeds actually be a historical view of the native plants in that area? Yes and no. I'd say you probably get like a pretty good slice of a snapshot when you till up seeds that are in, like dormant in the soil at a lower soil horizon than what would typically be exposed. But I think also because of the amount of tilling that's been done in a lot of fields, you're going to get a lot of seeds that are invasives and weeds that you don't want. So you will eventually, like if I were to leave this space, and I've noticed it this year, if I were to leave it untilled and just let it go, eventually there are trees that start popping up, you know, within the native grasses. There's oaks out there, there's cedar elms. So thanks. So yeah, I mean, it will eventually convert back into that sort of grassland savanna that it is naturally, where there's a mix of trees and grass, but we want it to be productive as well. So finding the balance between tilling and not tilling. Thanks for that. Who was that? Oh, Tordog. Thank you for that super chat for faster connection and more content. There's definitely some content that I'm working on in the background that I just haven't announced because I don't know when it's going to be done. I had some business meetings as well when I did the conference this past week, just to figure out, you know, how to structure this better to offer more. So we're going to move in that direction, and that's all I'm going to say right now, because I like to have surprises and not tell you guys everything. Yeah, so judging the health of a body of water by the presence of dragonflies, Phytoalchemist, that's definitely an excellent indicator species. That was part of the reason that I feel like it was really important for me to try and figure out like what I could use from that space. I did look into, someone had asked, and I lost where it was at, but someone asked if the algae serves a purpose in the pond, and it does. It's serving the purpose of cleaning those nitrates and the other nutrients that are coming downstream into it all winter during our rainy season. The spring, because we had tons of rain, it's going to help clean and absorb the nutrients out of the pond. And that's why it's able to grow as well as it does, is because those nutrients exist in there in the first place. So by removing it, then we're removing that out of there as well. It does serve to some extent as a habitat for larvae, mosquito larvae, frogs, and so I am working very slow and being careful about it. We've talked a little bit about machinery in there, but I'm just, as much as I can do by hand, I will, because there's nothing worse than stepping on baby frogs. Like it crushes me inside because they're such good beneficials to have around. So I'm really, really trying to be sensitive to the ecology, especially like in a riparian wet zone. Yeah. Sorry, what did I say that was too big of a word? Please. I don't mean to, but yeah, exactly. So you could compress and burn the filamental algae like firewood. That is a very good point. We have so much firewood here and trees that I still need to thin in order to kind of balance out the woodlands. So not gonna do it that way, but we'll figure it out as we go. East Texas, best time to transplant fruit trees. And then I'm going to go back to the wall here. So I think for most of Texas, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that winter is the best time, like fall and winter. But I'm looking at doing it, I basically do it when everything's dormant, which is when I can get the trees, to be honest, usually. So that's what I would look at, is like later in the winter, definitely before bud break. It makes it so much easier, and also planning again for rain to get those trees watered in. I didn't have to water any of the ones that I got for my birthday this year back in January, so I didn't water any of those until last month, and I really should have started doing it the month prior, but we just had so much rain this year that it was pretty fantastic as far as not having, like, it being hands off. So I highly encourage you to plan your trees around the season so that it's less work for you. Let's see. Would I plant them around the garden to help with shade in Texas and a windbreak? Yes. So this is going into, Jesse had asked if I'd plant trees around my garden to help with some shade in Texas and a windbreak plus trees to help keep the soil cooler and damper, or would give too much shade. So this is a huge thing that I'm thinking about. In here, let's see. There was a question about fall plans, and that's part of my planning and strategy that's going to happen here. The whole idea of, and I don't like calling it a food forest, but I don't have, like, and it's not agroforestry, and it's not, I guess it's kind of alley cropping, or restoration agriculture. You know, there's so many terms for it, but part of the plan for the field, because it's so hot and dry and windy, and we just get the extremes of all the weather, is to really get a lot of trees going so that I can crop below them and around them with things that are not as tolerant of high wind and of extreme heat or extreme cold. So yeah, building in, you know, the windbreak and stuff, I mean, that's going to be probably multiple videos in itself, to be honest. Just on that selection process, I finally gotten to a point where I've decided how many trees I'd like to do, and it's just a matter of getting them you know, put in place in the fields, like plotted out so that I know that I'm able to manage it. And it's going to be a multi-year process, but looking at the trees, even the fruit trees we have in the front yard, and granted they're only a few years old, they don't cast that much shade. And so unless you're planting like deep in a forest, I wouldn't worry so much about the shade, to be honest. Like, I think that we're going to need shade in the coming years a lot more than we'd like to realize. I've noticed that a lot of the annual crops that I would typically grow in full sun are doing much better in the shade this year. They're not producing as early, but I think having both shaded and unshaded areas is something that we definitely need to be thinking about a lot more. And there's going to be a lot of trees to plant. So, as far as the pond in full sun, partial sun, or complete shade, I mean, I think it's the same. I think that it's good to have a variety of options, but I do think that bodies of water tend to do a little bit better in, like, with more sun. Just, I don't know, there's something that goes on there, and I don't know completely because I haven't dug that much in, like, underwater plants, to be honest. But I think that having a variety of options as far as planting, growing, it increases your odds of winning. There was another question that was, if I'm taking into account climate change when selecting trees and cover crops. And so yes, as we're seeing a lot more extremes, you know, we're the hottest summer on record, longest rainstorms on record, like there's all of these things that we're seeing, and every year is setting a new record. And so I think that you have to think about these things. We're not going to get into the nitty-gritty of it because I know a lot of people still have varying opinions for whatever reason, and so that's just not a conversation that's worth having as far as I'm concerned. But as far as cover crops go, no, I'm not really thinking about climate. I mean, I am looking for things that have deeper roots, and I'm looking for more perennial stuff so that I can keep soil in place, because I think our storms are going to get more intense. As far as trees go, I am looking at a wider range, both from, you know, far north stuff that may not do well here and honestly isn't doing well in the summer, to far south, like tropical stuff that you know, may not survive winter, but I could wrap it for a few years and suddenly we don't have that cold of a winter anymore and it does fine. So I'm trying to plant, like, span the gamut. One of the things I told the other day was that plan for 50% loss. Like, if you plan mentally, and I know it sounds horrible, like if you plan mentally for 50, oh yeah, we're buffering. I'll go back. We'll see. We'll see if that came back. I'm guessing somebody will be, okay. Let's see. Let's see. Well, no. I don't know why I got deleted, but if they were timed out and hidden, there must have been a reason. Okay, so it looks like we're back. And so I was talking about trees with climate adversity. So I'm planning for a 50% loss. And I think with that sort of mindset and trying things that don't work in your area, like we're going to see, I mean, I see orchardists in Maine that are growing peaches this year, and they've never been able to grow peaches. And yeah, they're really great orchardists, but also our temperatures are different. So it's not going to stop me from planting macadamia nuts and avocados and bananas and things that don't grow in Texas and this far north, because I can wrap them for a few years and then, you know, I mean, hopefully they would still not grow this far north, but we don't know how that's going to work out. So I think just planning for every scenario, you know, be prepared. Okay, so let's see. 1 good, 2 buffering. Okay, thank you, Ralph. Yeah, there was questions about people getting muted and whatnot. I'll just reiterate, if something is off topic, if it's going like really far off topic, you're having your own conversation with somebody you know, that might get, you know, muted or hidden, just because we're trying to make sure that everyone in the comments is able to get help from each other, and that I'm able to see questions as they're flying by as well. So don't take it personally. It is just moderators trying to really help me out here. There are some new people, and yeah, there's we'll just work it out, but like, it's not worth fighting about in the comments. Like, we're trying to learn here. So, you know, contact each other if you're friends on a side chat. Okay, so now that's over. Yeah, species selection I'm always looking for help with, if that's something. I don't know if that was towards me or someone else in the comments, but I'm always looking for suggestions. Let's see. Do you have a well or grab water from a stream? So we have a, that is typically how we're getting water. Yeah, we have a well. That's typically how we get water around here. There's a couple of ponds. I haven't started, you know, plumbing them in, and of course I'm going to do some level of rainwater capture and really focusing more on infiltration than storing it, but I may look at storage as well in the future. So there's a lot of thought being given to water, for sure. But currently it's just well, which is also part of the reason. We're on the shallow end of the aquifer for this part of Texas, so that's part of the reason too that I'm really trying to not make it an irrigated setup, because who knows how long we'll have the irrigation. We talked about pond algae, so we can pull that one down. This is one I've answered before, but there's always new people asking it, so I might as well answer it again. So the question is, did you go to university and did you study something related to agriculture? And the answers are yes and no. I went to college, university, whatever we want to call it, guessing this is from across the pond. And I did not study anything science related because I got talked out of studying. I wanted to study chemistry when I was in high school. And I got out of it because my math scores weren't good. So I ended up in the arts, and I started in theater and then made my way into film and TV. And then worked in that for years after college, both in front of and behind the camera, as far as like production and whatnot. And then also did a lot of just like back end stuff. So it was working more on the corporate side. I worked at Disney for 6 or 7 years and had my backyard garden during that time. And so my specialty, like I studied film, but my specialty as far as work goes, was like systems management. So it was supply chain operations and analytics. It's a mouthful. It was much easier for my mom to tell everyone that I was a Disney princess instead of what I really did. But it was looking at large amounts of data and finding the discrepancies and patterns. And I think that this actually applies to farming and gardening and ecology really well, because we are looking to replicate patterns found in nature in our own gardens. So it's easy for me to see when something is out of place in the pattern. That actually is a good segue into this. I got multiple questions about bugs, as far as good bugs versus bad bugs. And so there will be a video on that in the near future. I have like, I don't know how many hours of footage of me just like taking pictures and video of bugs, because I just think it's fascinating. It's a lot of spiders for the most part, but I like insects a lot. And I like all of them a lot, because even the bad ones are usually food for the good ones. And so when we're talking about, seeing patterns in nature, that's a big part of it, is looking at the way that ecology works, and what that food chain looks like. We learn, briefly when we're younger in biology about the food web, and we learn about like the above ground food web. We don't really learn that much about the below ground food web, at least we didn't here in Texas. And so, bringing that, but then we kind of like brush it off as, it's like you learn it and it's back there somewhere, but then we don't think about it as much when we are putting things into practice. And so bringing that back up to the front and center of conversation. There are things that you can do to integrate pest management, but really once you start learning, it's more about learning the life cycles of these insects to know what you're up against. And then from there, you can kind of start dialing them in and figuring out how to use them to do your bidding. So I like to think that all of my beneficial insects are my henchmen. I got lots of them. It's big squad goals. But so I won't go through a list of easy to spot good versus bad. I will look up, what are they called? Stink bugs? I think you could just look up stink bugs. They have other names. Look that up and learn to identify their eggs and learn to identify what they look like in their various instars, and start squashing them, because not a lot of things tend to eat them. But other than those, we'll go over others, yeah, in the near future for sure. Woo, these comments are flying. Okay, so let's see. Victor, I can't actually help you with salination of the soil. I have not dealt with salty soil, but I'm hoping that someone in the comments can help you. I'll make a mental note of that question too. And look, the salt content in the well water is slightly higher, but not in an amount that I'm worried about, especially since I'm not irrigating that much. So, yeah, so there are more P.O. Box goodies. I think we might have froze. Oh God. It's like so annoying. Technology is just, it may be the way that I have this set up too, but I like using the cell phone camera instead of the laptop camera, because the laptop camera is a much smaller resolution, but I might just need one device trying to do live stream at the same time. That might be part of the problem. Here, but I think, oh yeah. So I got seeds. Oh, I got socks too. I got like a bunch of socks, and they're in the other room. I'm not gonna run off camera to get them. So, but I got a lot of seeds from you guys. I'm very excited about. There are a few things in here I've never grown. What is that? That's just a bag. That's just another bag. Apparently I was cleaning up and put everything in this bag. But yeah, I have never grown tamarind, but there is a great write-up that was enclosed in this box with the seeds about how to do this. So that's going to be a winter project in the greenhouse for sure. And then there's a lot of peppers, which are always exciting. There's some medicinal plants in here as well. There were some seeds I wanted to show you. I don't know what I might have pulled them out. Oh no, they're there. I was like, I might have pulled them out to show my dad and then not put them back in. So this is for the Italian cucuzzi. Gosh. And those are weird looking seeds, right? They don't look like squash seeds at all. Like, I don't know if you can really see, it's probably going to be fuzzy because of the bandwidth, but they're like kind of square on the edges. They look so cool. But those are like those really long, like a really long squash. So I'm gonna have to build an arbor so I can grow these and have them hanging over. But yeah, I got a bunch of seeds. Thanks to everyone who sent stuff. I was totally expecting to find a completely empty P.O. box, and then I found one that had seeds and it had socks, and it had this coffee mug, and it had snacks, like some of my favorite snacks, because I'm constantly just sharing stuff on Instagram about what I eat, and I live on, you know, bars and ice cream, so I got snacks in there. What else did I get? Oh, I got some tree tags. That was exciting. Metal tags now, so I can get all of my trees tagged. This was I wanted to show this too. So we picked most of our pears this week. They're very small this year. We didn't thin the fruit, so we might not get any from them. We might not get any from them last year because they might start behaving like a biennial. Apparently, if you don't thin your fruit, then they're going to do that push that year, and then the next year you might not get squat. But we'll see. I'm going to feed the tree and prune it back and see what it decides to do. But I don't even know what kind of pears these are, and neither does my dad. Like, he didn't save tags from anything. So I'm like slowly through process of elimination and tasting and watching growth and looking stuff up and figuring out, you know, what stuff is. But yeah. So I don't know what you guys are talking about eating frogs here in the comments. I think I'd go for the crawdads that are in the mud, or crayfish, what would you call them? Crawdads. That are on the edge of the pond before I eat the frogs, because the frogs are like this, they're tiny. Like they're maybe half an inch, and so there's not a lot of meat, but they might also be crunchy. I don't know. I guess I shouldn't knock it till I try it. But the big frogs, the dogs usually get to before I ever could, so. I'm going to scroll past these frog things. Have I looked into commercial trellis orchard systems? I really haven't. Part of what I'm doing here is getting some trees in the ground and then using those as trellises for vines. I'm really looking at it more from like an agroforestry perspective than putting in a ton of infrastructure like a commercial orchard. I think that the vision will become a little more clear as I move forward, but part of the reason that I wanted to do my own thing and help my dad start this farm versus going to another farm doing it a specific way, not so much to reinvent the wheel or anything like that, but just to do it in a way that felt right and logical in accordance with nature versus in a way that people have been doing it in order to maximize production. I definitely still want production, obviously, because I like to eat, but I don't think that it's, I just think there might be ways to do things better. And since we're fairly small scale, I think it's a good space to experiment with that and see how it works out. I mean, I might be wrong and then move towards something a little more as far as commercial trellising. I definitely want to do some espalier because I just like that level of pruning, but for the most part, yeah. Yeah, please recommend Texas native plants. I need to get my hands on some black persimmon. I don't have any growing locally here. I've noticed driving around in like the Austin area that there's a lot of them that are fruiting right now, and I just didn't grab any seeds last week because, you know. So I'm going to probably be back through there a couple more times in the next month or two. So I'm hoping to find some seeds. But if anyone has, you know, lead on saplings, like that would be phenomenal, and then I don't have to start from seeds. So yeah, it is all practical experience for sure. There's not not any school book learning, but there are people here in the comments. I'm gonna call out Phyto Alchemist because he's around here, where they are doing the book learning side of this, and so I bombard them with questions as far as if I'm on the right track, if they've read anything or learned anything in a space. They send me plenty of peer-reviewed studies to read. And so we all learn this stuff together, you know, through practical experience as well as through the stuff that exists that's just out there to learn through school. Oh, I can't find the words today. Yeah, the stink bugs were horrible here this year. There's not a whole lot that can be done about that, unfortunately, other than hand picking. I just restarted my feed on the laptop here, so if you guys were seeing some buffering, because the comments froze, and I couldn't see what I was looking at. But I know I can figure this out because there's like 5-year-olds that do unboxing videos, right? So I should eventually figure this technology side on this out. So, boop, 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 boop. I don't think it'll let me roll up that far. If I missed something, be patient because there's, the chat is only letting me scroll back so far after rebooting. So, yeah, you can mail ice cream, but you don't mail it, you mail a gift certificate for me to order ice cream, basically, is how that worked out. And I'm very excited, but I gotta make space in the freezer, so we're going through and cleaning out, you know, old barbecue and whatever else is down there, so that I have enough space to put a case of ice cream. But I'm gonna pack on some pounds. It's gonna be great, because that's an easy way to do it. So, oh, someone was saying, I don't know, it was something about my hair. And thanks for saying it looks good, because most of the time, it does what it wants to do. I had lots of conditioner and not a lot of washing. That's how it stays good. Nothing to do with gardening, but so glad to hear you guys are saving seeds. That makes me very happy. I have shared my hair secrets before. It was in a comment, and I gave the girl the play-by-play, and maybe I copy and pasted it somewhere, and I could include it in a newsletter or something. I don't know. I'm gonna set up. So that was one of the things that I want to mention is that I want to set up. I want to set up an email list so that I have like a centralized point to communicate with you guys aside from YouTube. And I like the community tab here, but I just feel like stuff is all over the place as far as like where I'm sharing information and articles. And so I don't have the sign up ready today because I didn't finish figuring out the format before we started the live stream, but it will be available very soon. And that will be, you know, where we're going to kind of facilitate the beginnings of maybe a seed swap, and whatever else is going on around here. Yeah. Thanks, mods, for all your work. I see that you're definitely working overtime. I'm hoping to see that all of these, that the conversations are able to really be effective and you guys are able to communicate and learn from each other in chat while everything else is going on. What's it like being a chef? I'm not really a chef anymore. Well, I guess you can't decide that you're not, but when I was private chefing, there was, yeah, when I was private chefing, it was a great job. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it was a great job. It was high stress because you're basically on call 24/7 to some extent. But it was also very challenging in the right ways. So learning how to schedule and plan things, learning how to work on, you know, interpersonal skills, work around dietary restrictions, make everyone happy. Like, there's a lot of power in food and in sharing food with people and making food for them, as far as even just changing their mood and outlook on the day. When you sit down to a nice dinner and you've had a really horrible day and then there's cake and ice cream, it's like, yeah, you shouldn't eat your feelings, but there's something to be said about just the power of food and its ability to influence, you know, emotion and make a bad day better in a roundabout way. Yeah, it's definitely, it was fun. Like, that's what I would say about being a chef. Working in a restaurant as a chef, maybe not so much. Like, you have to be crazy passionate and put in the hours. My dad's done that as a restaurant manager my entire life, and it's really high stress, really high stakes. You're constantly dealing with people complaining. But yeah, like, as a private chef, there's a little bit less of that. You get caught in the crossfire every once in a while because you are effectively part of someone's family, at least if you're doing it the way that I do. But there's so much, yeah, there's so much good that came out of it that I enjoyed it. But I like farming more. So, gosh, you guys are really, you got a lot of work to do here today. So I'm gonna go back to the wall. This is funny because I know who wrote this question. It says, do you have a shack I can come squat in? And that was Leo, Phytoalchemist. And I do not. I don't even have a shack that I can squat in. I'm still sleeping in the living room here. But I'm working on my shack that I can squat in. And then maybe I'll work on a shack that other people can squat in, because I'd love to have a space for interns and artists in residence and that sort of stuff to really like open up and share and have a little bit extra help and for people to come and learn. Ideally, I'd have either artists in residence building really cool playground stuff in the woods, or someone that's working on like their dissertation, and then I can just learn the science stuff that they're working on, and it would be in soil. So keep me in mind. But we're probably, I'd say, like probably a year or more out from having squat space for anyone, including myself. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, you guys. Ralph and John and everyone else who's moderating, thank you so much. It seems like they have found us. The trolls have found us today. So yeah. Thanks for keeping up on that. This one's a fun, cute thing to get it back on track. I picked a habanero today, only to find a small borehole in it. Turns out that a caterpillar had set up a home inside and was happily feasting. Question: is this the bravest caterpillar that has ever lived? I'd say yes, unless you find one that's living in a scorpion pepper. And maybe that one's the bravest that ever lived. But I'm always amazed at what the natural world is capable of eating. That you have these plants that have developed massive defense over, centuries, millennia. And it's like, not only humans go, oh, this is fun to eat, and it burns my mouth, which is like the whole point of it. That's its defense mechanism, and we're embracing it as like a cool thing. But like insects also are able to eat it, and birds don't even taste spice, and so they can eat it, and like it gets crazy. Yeah. So might be one of the bravest caterpillars that ever lived. That's what I was getting around to. So this was another one on winter cover crops. Winter crops and cover crops, what my plans are for the winter. So currently my plans are that as we get closer to winter, well, one of the things I'm going to do, probably not before I leave, but when I get back, just to keep an eye on it, because I'm leaving so much to water right now, and it's the hottest part of the year, is start sowing transplants for brassicas and other winter crops. And so I'll do, myself personally, I'll do things like broccoli rabe and rapini. I'll do more lettuces, kale, chard, like a lot of greens that tend to be a little overpriced, that are a little easier to grow, and that are harder to get around here. And I might get into some of the Asian green seeds I have as well. And then when I'm ready to transplant my peppers out of that little fenced off garden that's irrigated, I'll move those guys out. And then this year I'm not going to be growing for public sale as far as fall crops, just because I really want the field to give the field some time to get into a better soil cycle. I don't want to mess with it too much, and so I'll pull the peppers from their little corner once they're done, and then I'll plop all of my winter stuff in, and then I might put a cover on it. Might do that in another couple little gardens around the yard. But basically just a lot of, and then planting root veggies too, as far as dropping those seeds in. And then doing row covers. And the cover crops we kind of covered. I'm still figuring out what my blend is. I really haven't been focused on that. There's a lot of moving parts, and just keeping stuff alive right now has been the predominant focus. But I will get into, those lists and whatnot over the next few weeks. Like, that's part of the good thing about me being away for a couple of weeks, is that it will give me time removed out of this environment where I have, limited critical tasks I'm working on, and can really focus on getting a lot of stuff in writing and building out resources for you guys to have access to. So that's where I'm at. If you've never grown kale before, yeah, suggestion would be getting seeds in the ground at the right time of year. You could, if you're not super hot, you could get them started now. You could probably get them started in a shady spot if you are super hot. I have some that are in the field that for whatever reason are still alive. I say that because it hasn't been watered or rained on in over a month, and they are just kicking it. And so they're really hardy plants. You might see them start to bolt if they're getting started, when it's hot. But really, it's just getting seeds in. For kale, like, they grow themselves. If you have an area that has a lot of, like, organic matter, then you'll get really big leaves. I found that out a couple years ago. I did some lazy composting in my garden in Los Angeles, and what I did was I dug trenches. I dug 2 trenches down the middle of the garden and just moved the soil to the side. And they were probably about a foot deep. And then I dumped, I had a trash can that had compost in it that wasn't being turned. And so it was just like this kind of rotting mess. And I had a bunch of stuff I was bringing home from the high school garden that I volunteered at. And so I was bringing all this stuff home for my chickens. And so what I did was I took all of that organic waste, I dumped it in the trench, I covered it with some newspaper, I might have sprinkled a little blood meal on it to get the worms moving in. And then I covered it back up with the soil, and then I planted my winter greens on top. And I've never grown such big greens in my entire life. Like, they were like bigger than my head by far. They were like 2 foot across leaves, and it was just because there's all of this, you know, organic matter that was breaking down in the soil. So yeah, kale's super easy. Get it in the ground, get it started. Yeah, if you can let it bolt and reseed, exactly. And so that's kind of what I'm doing with the one in the field, is seeing, is it gonna push seeds? Is it just chilling? Like, it's not crunchy, so it's not dead, but I don't know how it's staying alive, to be honest. Any opinion on the Farmer's Almanac suggesting a wet winter? I haven't read that yet, but that is another good reason to not till my fields, because if it's going to be wet, then focusing on building organic matter that will allow the water to sit longer and infiltrate more deeply, as well as working on earthworks, which earthworks is basically just figuring out the contours of the space and then adding in sort of like stop gaps, essentially, whether it's berms and swales or, you know, trenching or whatever, to help catch that water and get it to infiltrate more deeply in the spaces you want versus just running off downhill. And so I didn't know it was going to be a wet winter, but I'm totally happy to hear that, totally embrace it. I think that if it is going to be, I think we should always prepare for extreme storms, like moving forward in the indefinite future, that we are going to have, I think, just longer storm cycles based on the way that storm cycles work and based on the way that, I can't really dig into the science of it without, you know, but yeah, the storm cycles are going to become longer and more extreme, and we need to prepare for that, leave roots in that soil, and try and capture as much water in place as we possibly can. So, let's see, because you guys are still here, so, and we still got Post-its on the wall. Natural pest control. Oh no, let's see if that froze again. So, if we're not frozen, I don't know, I stopped seeing comments come up on the phone, and that's usually when we've frozen. So, I'm gonna see if it's popped back up here or not. Oh, we're talking about pawpaws now. So, yeah, I don't have any pawpaws in the ground. I did have some that I got, and they did not do well because the roots got a little too damaged before I tried to plant them. I didn't know anything about them, so yeah, I just refreshed. Is it working now? Are we thumbs up? Are we good? Hi from around the world. I'm always happy to see people on the other side of the planet. I don't know. I know it's like a really small world because I've traveled some of it, but it's just, it makes me happy to know that there's still people on the other side of the world for whatever reason. That makes me happy. Not for whatever reason you guys are there, because I think that it's good there's people everywhere. So, let's see. Transferring seedlings. So if you've planted seeds in a pot, this is for lychee, or lychee, depending on how you pronounce it, and it really depends on your weather. So if you're going to experience a cold winter and you're working with a tropical, then I'd advise to keep it indoors or in a greenhouse, someplace where it can survive that first year. Really, when we're looking at sensitive plants, we want to protect them for that first couple of years when they get the roots established, and then from there, try to let them do their own thing. So I'm going to be wrapping, like, I have my avocado, right? And so I'm going to be wrapping Fred up this year in burlap, and then, I don't know, maybe some more, like, later on the year after, but yeah, I would not plant it out if you have a cold winter. And if you do, then, you know. Let's see. It always freezes right when she gets right to my question. Well, I didn't see your question now. Oh, natural pest control around kill bugs. There it is. I don't know what a kill bug is. What's a kill bug? Just insects in general that eat kale? Like, I keep a lot of wasps nearby, and most of the bugs that have eaten my kale in the past have been various sorts of, like, caterpillars and worms. And the wasps really like those, and the spiders do too. So I'd say just having a high enough plant diversity, yeah, high enough plant diversity to attract beneficials is how I control insects. And I'll get into that more. I'm definitely going to dedicate some content to that versus it just being a Q&A question, because it goes so much deeper than that and there's so much to explore. So yeah, wasps though, like, we're talking like mud daubers. And so they're not aggressive. Yeah, they fly. But they're not aggressive. They eat a lot of pests. They actually eat, like, black widows and stuff, like spiders that you don't want, as well as, you know, various caterpillars and whatnot. I've never, like, knock on wood, I've never been stung by a mud dauber. There are other wasps that are more aggressive, and so it is case by case. But if you notice wasps and you don't notice a lot of insects eating your plants, the worst thing that I think you can do is kill those wasps, because then you're going to start seeing insects eating your plants. So, okay. Thank you for your help, Plaza Glider. I don't know if you're going to lay down right now or later, but if you need to take a break. Let's see. Yeah, so Jessie Lee, I don't know how to start a Veronica forum, but that is something that is on my list as far as someplace where I can review and interact with stuff. I don't know if that looks like a Discord channel or a Slack channel, or I know there's, like, all of these options, and I just haven't had a moment to dig into it, and that is on my to-do list in the next 2 weeks. I want to roll into September, being able to create a better experience for all of us. So, gonna work on that, definitely. If you have suggestions, please, like, leave them in the comments or in the chat window. That is a loaded question, Neville. What is the best indeterminate tomato variety? I think it really depends on your taste, you know? I personally love a Cherokee purple tomato. I like the flavor. I'm all about the earthy flavored, lower acid, much sweeter. And to be honest, like, the seeds haven't been growing as true as I'd like them to. I've gotten great performance out of the Zapotec Pink. I think that those are great. I love, like, a miniature currant tomato that's the size of a pea. Those are great. It really depends on, like, what your goals are as far as flavor and use case. So that's a very loaded question. So let's see. Suggest a Discord channel. Okay, so we'll look into the Discord channel and creating one, because I'd like for these conversations to be able to exist in, like, one ecosystem. Right now we're split between YouTube and Patreon and Facebook and Instagram, and not only is that a lot for me to manage, but it's also, I just don't think that the conversation is as robust as it could be if we all had one space. But I also don't want to make people sign up for a million things. So that's one of the things we've been running into, and I'm going to try and streamline this a lot more. What do I think about permaculture? So I think that lots of people are going to start hearing about permaculture because it is a no-till, for the most part. It's a no-till solution to agriculture. I think that use our sense of critical thinking when going down any path as far as agriculture is concerned. There's a lot of things with any new, and it's not really new because people have been talking about it for years now, at least in agriculture circles, but if you're just joining that part of the community, then a lot of times you'll see methods and techniques, and you need to do this in order to be classified as that. And it really is important for us to critically think about what our individual issues are in our environments, as far as water retention, as far as what plants will grow well, as far as if we're using livestock or not, or including them in that conversation, and then go from there. And so knowing, what like, first and foremost, what's the native ecosystem, you know? Like, I'm not going to handle being in this sort of grassland, savanna, you know, edge of, like, kind of woods area, the same way that someone in a fully forested area would, or the same way someone in the desert would. And you're not going to use the same techniques across the board to solve problems across the board. So anyone who tries to sell you it that way and says, oh, you need to build berms and swales, or you need to build a herb spiral, is the big joke in permaculture, right? Like, and they're beautiful. But it's like, will this, actually taking a step back and going, okay, well, this is a cool idea, but will this function effectively long-term in my environment? And is it going to solve this problem for me? So it's about not creating more problems in addition to the ones that you're already solving. But I do think that permaculture has a lot of great building blocks as far as, you know, how we look at and approach the land that we're working with and that we're stewarding. And so yeah, that's kind of in that direction. I think that we're going to have to go a little bit deeper than permaculture. I'm not sure that deeper is the right word, but really, like, starting at the ground level, literally, and working on soil building, because without good, healthy, robust, dynamic soil that's, like, full of life, that's full of microbes, and we're understanding the soil food web and how things exist and continue to exist in that space, then it doesn't matter if we're doing, you know, permaculture, regenerative agriculture, agroforestry, or agroecology, or whatever you want to call it. Like, if you don't have those building blocks in place, everything else is going to be a lot harder. So, you know, working on figuring out your soil and making it better, like, that's where I think that we got to start. Let's see, have I tried growing pineapple, guava, or loquats? So, pineapple guava. I was like, I have my pineapple top. It's just like the running joke now. It still hasn't gotten planted. But yeah, we have a loquat tree in the front yard. It's protected from the north wind. It's probably like 3.5 feet tall now, and we'll see. It seems like it's taken off this year. I'm making sure to water it more often than it gets normally. So we'll see. Yeah, I do agree that permaculture, like in permaculture as a practice, will help save the world for sure. There's definitely some interesting thoughts around making sure that we're planting trees in places that are available to support trees versus, you know, going out into a sandy desert and trying to reduce desertification in a way that the space has always been a desert. It has always functioned as a desert. Like, working on areas instead that are not deserts and are just becoming them because they're lacking coverage. I think that there needs to be a lot more people embracing critical thinking in solving these problems. And so you got to understand ecology, or start understanding ecology, start understanding the soil food web and the above ground food web in your ecosystem, and then decide what to plant, which is why I've been observing this space for the last, I mean, we're moving towards a year now, right? We got like 4 or 5 months left, I think. But that's why I've been doing a lot more observation. You know, I jumped the gun early in the season, planting stuff in the forest, being really excited because everything was wet and cool and everything could survive. And then you get into summer and you realize how important it is to understand how your soil is functioning. And it's not high functioning here, at least not as high as I thought it would. But being able to critically think, to not get married to ideas too intensely, you know, we gotta lose the dogma across the board. I think that it's good to have things to believe in. I think that it's good to being able to take a step back and go, is this effectively making something better or worse? And if you can't say that it's making something better, like with me and tilling, I can't find any resources that say this makes it better long term. So if it's not making something better, then you have to choose a different strategy. If it's making something worse and you continue choosing that, then that's the definition of insanity, right? Is doing something over and over again and expecting this different results, unless you're just like total masochist to your ecosystem. And yeah, then, you know, keep doing what you're doing, but I can't help you. Let's see. I don't know, it's this magnet conversation. That's fine. Yeah, so and then I gotta get back to the wall here. But the comment is permaculture would work. freeze on me? Oh no, I see comments, okay. The comment is, it would work if the climate did not change plus 2 degrees. In 10 years, half of Iowa won't grow as it does now. So this is the catch-22, right? Is that we're looking at a pretty intense, there's a lot of than there were in growing 10 years ago when I started doing it, or it's been more than 10 years, but yeah, when I started doing it on my own. And there's a lot more challenges than there was 20 years ago when I was doing it. Oh gosh, what's happening to that feed? And so the challenges are exponential. Like that's definitely, okay, this looks like it might be back. I'm gonna give it a second. Because I was really annoyed when I watched it the other week and realized that we like jumped over entire answers, and it's like, no, those were good answers, sort of. I don't know, maybe. But so the challenges now are a lot more than they were 10 years ago. They were a lot more than they were 20 years ago. I've been growing since I was probably 5 or 6, and I don't know that I paid that much attention, like, even that many years ago, but we'll say even in the last 10 years. Like, I have noticed that it is a lot more difficult to keep things alive, to even finding good bagged soil that's not, doesn't show, you know, when you're growing stuff, impacts of salts and heavy metals and herbicides and pesticides to some extent. Like, there's a lot of things that we're more concerned with, but we cannot approach this as a, well, that would work fine, but it's not going to because it won't work in the future. Like, we gotta do what's going to work now. And so part of the reason that I'm here in Texas and working on degraded land is because this is the time to do it. Like, this is the time that we have to do it. This is our best window of opportunity to do it, and I'd rather do it and have it fail long term than not do it and not have that in place, because the odds are that if you get your trees in place, you get, you know, some solid natives in place, that you're going to be able to start effectively building soil in that space and supporting a microbiome that surrounds you. And so I'm not going to worry super hard about, you know, like that it's not going to grow as well later as it will grow now. Right now, when we talk about agriculture, feeding the world and whatnot, what we're working on right now in terms of industrialized agriculture, not feeding the world, and it's not going to feed the world anymore, you know, 5 or 10 years from now. So we need a different approach. Like, if it were working, then I'd be 100% behind it. This isn't because I'm like scared of chemicals or whatever. Like, it is literally not working to feed the world. So what can we do instead? I think that taking some of that power back and into your own hands, and all you can manage is an herb garden, like just having that process in your life, it changes your outlook and worldview on agriculture. So that's, you know, where I feel like I fit in. And planning long term for the future of humanity versus for my own, I mean, that's also where I fit in. So that's going way off. Let's see. Yeah, there's the definition of insanity. Thanks, Ralph, for letting me know about this buffering. Unfortunately, if it's on my end, I don't see your comment till later, but it's helpful. Oh yeah, so if I mention anything mentioned about climate change and the government blocks my feed, wink. No, you know, it's just, like, it's worth talking about, for sure. We're in Northwest Texas, so we're kind of like, you know, an hour away from Dallas, hour away from Fort Worth situation. It is hot and dry. We also get cold. We're on the edge of most of the storm fronts, which is really nice. Yeah, we're not, you know, open to the public at this point in time, but at some point we will be, and when that happens, I'm nearby. But I think it's also fun to come out and see the space. I know that my dad really wants it to be a community space, so we're going to work on that as we get there. But reading about impact that tree planting had in Uganda. Yeah, exactly. So when you're looking at land that's facing desertification, and has had tree coverage in the past, especially in the recent past. One of the best things you can do is plant trees in that space again and really like start reconditioning that soil. You're effectively feeding whatever microbes are left, and then also creating those mycorrhizal relationships again because you have tree roots in the ground. So it does improve the situation long term, and I think that is something that we need to think about rather than going, well, it's going to be hotter in 10 years, so what does it matter? Because things are not going to grow well anyway. To say, well, we could potentially have an impact on, if it's hotter or not. And I think everyone thinks that what they do won't matter, but all of these little things add up. Like, I'm only going to be able to sink, I don't know how many tons of carbon by planting trees, but I have an acre. An acre is not that much space to plant trees. Like, all the rest of the forest has its trees, so it's not like I can add a lot there, and I will be taking some out to improve the understory and get some growth in that forest. But, if everyone did what they're capable of doing, then it does add up. So I'm not going to sit back and, like hide under my blanket and cry. There's some days where that happens when I read some of the reports coming out, but for the most part, I mean, you just got to keep acting like, let's, you go out in a ball of flames. Like, that's all. So as we move into, we're going to see if this is still, yeah. So that's why I'm thankful, JK, for the moderators so that I don't have to deal with the deleting comments, because I have enough trouble keeping my train of thought between trying to glance at the comments every so often and like think about what I'm saying and the words I'm looking for. I wanted to talk about this question that I had gotten about soaking garlic. So I had done a post about this a while ago, and I do a baking soda and kelp mix, and then I do a alcohol dip. It's usually vodka or tequila, something high proof that would generally you could use to disinfect stuff. I'll use rubbing alcohol too sometimes. But the question was, does it promote growth of the garlic, or does it just to prevent disease and fungus as far as my observations go? So I think anything that prevents disease and fungus helps promote growth in a roundabout way, because it's not fighting pathogens, like your seed is not fighting pathogens. But I do think, and I don't have any evidence to share to prove this, but I do think that the baking soda helps to create a pH where there's certain pathogens that cannot thrive, and so that helps. I think that the kelp that I soak it in as sort of like a nutrient boost might be more for the soil microbes to come and find and like attach and start doing their work versus it actually feeding the seed anything, although it might do both. But yeah, I do a lot of these preparations. I don't think, did I do a video on that? I don't remember if I did a video on garlic. I might have. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, look at the archives, and if you still don't know what I'm talking about, then let me know and I'll find the post that this was covering. But yeah, it basically, I think anytime you're doing disease and fungus prevention, like trying to take those extra steps and encouraging good microbial growth as opposed to bad, and the bad would be, decomposers essentially, decomposing on not your timeline, then you are promoting growth by taking the steps to prevent. It's part of integrated pest management, right? It's to prevent that sort of stuff. As far as peroxide use in my garden goes, the only time I really use peroxide is if I'm trying to kill off like mold and stuff in the greenhouse. I'll use a little. I also use vinegar for that. I don't know like what the pros and cons difference is, and so I've moved more towards vinegar, and I'm actually using now like the fruit vinegars that I'm brewing and plant vinegars I'm brewing through the Korean natural farming stuff, just to see like if it makes an impact. As long as it gets rid of the fungi that I don't want in a space on like aerial part. I don't use it on the soil, but as long as it gets rid of the aerial stuff, then I'm pretty happy with that. I think going out in a ball of flames is optimistic because we're floating through space like I don't know how many thousands of miles an hour, and then rotating in hundreds of miles an hour, and the fact that we're even able to exist is like mind-blowing. So yeah, we don't know how things are going to work out, but it doesn't hurt to try and have a hand in that narrative. Thank you for that suggestion, JK. I did not put the PayPal link on this chat, but if that's the way that you want to help me buy trees, I really appreciate it through PayPal, because then there's not a percentage that's taken out. I'm gonna figure out how to manage this just a little better, as far as it not being so disjointed. I wasn't sure how live stream was gonna work out to begin with, and now that I like it, I think that I'll have to figure out how to make it better, because I want to be able to share pictures and videos and stuff too while I'm talking with you guys. So thanks for joining, Michael. It's always a pleasure seeing new people and people who've been around before, and thank you for that super chat there, as I'm talking about not doing super chats and whatnot. But I appreciate all of it, and you know, I gotta keep the programs running in the background. So we got a few more questions, and then we're gonna bounce because it's 1:40 here, and I have a phone call in a little bit. But one of the things I wanted to mention, I don't know if he's around still modding or if he actually went and laid down, is that there will be I don't know if this is publicly available or not, but I'm just going to announce it so we can add questions. A grafting tutorial. One of the moderators that does chats here every Sunday is a professional nurseryman, and he does tons of grafting. So he's doing all sorts. Does like thousands of bud grafts a day situation, and knows a lot in that space. So you know, if you got questions in that space, then find a way to get them to me, and I will forward them to him, or you know, leave them here somewhere. I don't know how to make it work, but yeah, we're gonna have some grafting information coming up. I think that that's a interesting space to dive into, especially if you have a very small general, just figuring all of that out. So is permaculture a cult? I don't know. I haven't joined it, so I don't know. I like to think of it, yeah, it has its moments. I didn't say that. I did not say that. Well, let's go to the next question. So I have a 48 square foot raised garden, 3 feet deep, with 3 to 4 fall crops for zone 9A. If you have a 3 feet deep raised bed, I highly recommend doing as many root vegetables as you can fit in that thing, as far as like turnips and carrots and beets and radishes, and like, it's gotta be stuff you want to eat, but that sounds amazing. Like, I wish I had 3 feet deep of soil that was workable. We'll get there, but we're not there yet. Yeah, so for fall, definitely look at root vegetables. Again, we're going to mention greens, a lot of brassicas, so things in like the broccoli family, kale, collards, Brussels sprouts, definitely digging into mustards. I love planting mustards. I don't know who else likes eating them, but I think they're great, especially as it cools off and they're not as like sulfury in flavor. I'd look at doing greens, like lettuces and whatnot. Sometimes I'll do cauliflower and stuff, but it tends to get a little buggy. And then there's tons of like Asian greens too. Like, don't overlook, you know, your bok choy and all of those tatsoi and those sorts of things, because those are really nice to have when kale starts feeling redundant. Yeah, dedicated following for permaculture. That's a good way to put it, Boldly Grow Homestead. I need some PR lessons from you. They are very dedicated, and I like a lot of ideas they bring to the table, for sure. That's the most ridiculous. Would I ever hire a minority to work for me? I am a minority, and she doesn't get paid very well. But that's ridiculous. I like that it got like hidden as I saw it. What kind of a question is that? I feel like, yeah, it doesn't really actually deserve, but yeah, I am a minority, so that's what makes America great, you know, is that melting pot. Let's see, specialize in wood restoration. Please keep planting trees to save old wood. Yeah, it's a huge part of why I'm doing it, JK. One of the things, it's the OSED, like really hard wood, but like great to work with. It's also known as bodark around here, which like I said before, I didn't know what people were talking about. I figured out it was that. And tons was cut down. It doesn't rot. So planting more stuff like that. Like I am looking at wood, like as a tree trees that don't produce like fruit or nuts, and also fruit and nuts, but like ones that don't produce edible crops, just because I'm a carver. And so part of wood carving is having those sources, and yeah, it's gonna be years before I can carve any of it, but I like putting that out there. For sure. Having it for the next generation of carvers, I guess would be how I would say it. Let's see. So, there's something I just saw and then I missed. Oh, there we go. Purple sprouting broccoli. Yes, I definitely recommend any of the sprouting broccolis. So the purple sprouting broccoli, the, I can't think of it, broccoli rabe, also known as broccolini, I think. There's a couple of broccoli that you'll get these little florets instead of like one big head. And I really recommend that, especially if you're a new grower. You're going to get a lot more bang for your buck, and you're going to get more harvest out of it. I have tended to see less insect issues than ones where you're trying to get a perfect head, and I haven't needed as many like row covers on them, and I feel like you can eat them over a longer period of time. So sprouting broccoli, flowering kale, and flowering sprouts is another. They're like flowering Brussels sprouts. Those are nice ones as well. Yeah, persimmons are in the ebony family, and so that's the Virginiana or whatever, right? It's like the other American native that's not the Texas persimmon, or is it the Texas persimmon too? I have never understood that, but I've definitely cut down some branches before, and the wood was beautiful, and I need to find some bigger ones to play with so I can carve golf clubs or something. I don't know what I'd carve out of it, but it's a wood I haven't carved yet, so it's on the list. What type of tree was that? It buffered right when you started. Oh, Bodark, Osage orange, also horse apple. Has lots of different names. I think that was maybe. Okay, cool. Working with marigolds. I don't know how to recommend growing marigolds. I just throw them out there and they grow. I'd say keep them evenly watered until they sprout. Like that's a big part of it. If the soil dries out too much and they start to germinate and then they stop, they don't seem to recover as quickly. But usually they grow like weeds around here, so not sure that I can help you with that one. Yeah, I definitely want to work some more persimmons into the landscape around here. I've noticed that we have a lack of food, like adequate food for the wildlife that lives around here, like skunks and possums and raccoons, and they seem to disappear during this time of year, and I see an increase in other wildlife and pests that I don't necessarily want around, or I'll see them, putting pressure on groups that we wouldn't necessarily want them pressuring. So I'd like to have some food for them, and maybe some for me. And I think the trees are nice. This was a request for a good and spicy recipe for fermenting cabbage. I do not have one off the top of my head, but that will be something that, oh, that's hilarious. That will be something in the future. I'm going to start digging more into like the cooking stuff. I'm cracking up at just like how hard you guys have managed to find me across the internet. So JK, that was a class project that I thought about taking down, and then I was like, nah, I'll leave it up. It's kind of ridiculous. It's a nice little Easter egg for you guys. So yeah, if you're scrolling through the comments and you see what JK is talking about, you can go and give that a little Google gander on the YouTube. That was a while ago, but I just never deleted it. I think I lost the like login for that account, to be honest. But I might have to dig it back up one of these days. Yeah, good point, Killflower. So Killflower says rocket radishes, salad leaves, parsley, and mint are all expensive in winter, yet easy to grow at home. And this is so true. If you live in a cold climate, a lot of times you can do like a cold frame over either building a frame with like old windows or plexiglass or upside down fish tank. or using, you know, some variety of like Agribon, has another name too. I can't think of right now, but Agribon's like the commercial Kleenex name for it. It's like a row cover to extend that season out. But there's a lot of things that you can grow in the winter that, you know, would cost more. So that's something to keep in mind when you're planning for fall to grow crops out, is where am I spending the most money on groceries as far as fresh produce? Because you could potentially save money growing it at home. You should be able to save money growing it at home, especially if you're doing soil building versus bringing in lots of amendments. We all talk about the story of the $200 tomato. That's the joke in every gardener circle, I think, when it's like trying to get it going. But like once you got the space in place for spring and summer, like why not carry it into fall and winter? So, and a lot of greens you can grow on your windowsill indoors in cake pans, and maybe we'll have to do some of that. Yeah, so the Osage orange, some farmers didn't like them because cows can choke on them. Yeah, if they try to eat like the crab apple or horse apple. It's not a crab apple, it's a horse apple. I guess that's probably why they call it that. And they're also, I think they're very thorny. Yeah, see, there's another, is that the young growth can be very thorny. But I want to get into hedge laying. I think that that would be really fun. And by fun, I mean frustrating and challenging. And so that seems like a good plant to do hedge laying with. So let's see. I can't keep citrus alive with over 1,000 chill hours. Yeah, it's hard. I have 600 to 800 chill hours here. We'll see if it survives through the winter. I have right now a kumquat tree as well as a macroot lime. And those are moving into the greenhouse for winter. But I don't know that it won't get too cold in there. So we'll see. We'll see how that works out. I'm going to, let's see, favorite best resources for learning about different soil types and health. I'm actually going to do a video on this one. So there's a lot of resources out there. I'd say dig into, like poke around the Savory Institute. There's a lot of stuff as far as talking about soil health, as well as look at Elaine Ingham's stuff on the Soil Food Web for just like getting that baseline sort of knowledge. If you search her on YouTube, there's videos of lectures and stuff that she's done. She put out just like a phenomenal amount of information. So Elaine Ingham. There's also, I can't think of her first name right now, but Professor Haney, who developed the Haney Test, which is to measure the organic, I'm going to get this wrong, but I think it's to measure the organic material in soil. Look at, you know, just even YouTube, Google, you know, soil building, soil health, something in that space. But I'm going to put together a resource or a video because I have resources that I love. Off the top of my head, they're harder to address because I don't have the URLs like in here, but I'm going to try and figure out how to do a screen share at some point and walk through like the resources that I'm using through the USGS and the USDA, at least here in the States, and then also resources to kind of identify and work through what types you're working with at home, wherever you're at, especially globally. Good to hear that the hedge laying was successful in Tanzania. It's something that I'm definitely interested in, just like learning as a practice. I like to get all of the Girl Scout badges. So, yeah, definitely thinking about larger animals for helping with the open space as well as with woods as I get more stuff in there. One of the problems right now is that I'd have to supplement feed, and I don't want to do that. So supplementing feed and adding a lot of fencing. So animals down the road, we're looking at chicken tractors, or at least some sort of poultry tractor in the coming year for the fields. But we'll see. Thank you, Boldly Grow Homestead, for all your help today. Yeah, you're super helpful as a mod. Oh, you found it in my playlist? Well, I'm like not great at covering my internet tracks then. Yeah, I got a lot of stuff floating around out there. Nothing that's too horrible, as far as I know. But definitely some stuff that's amusing. I'm sure there's college TV stuff that will show up at some point, and then you can see me when I was like 18 or 19, bouncing around, reading a teleprompter horribly. It was fun though. So I'm gonna end on this last question, and it's something that I think we're gonna have to pick up maybe in the next round of Q&As or so, but something that I want to start getting into. So I'll read this first. I work so hard, but after hours, or especially in winter, I lose motivation and gain weight. How do I ignore the urge to consume? So winter is really hard. I think it's a really hard time for a lot of people. Just because there's seasonal affective disorder, like we're kind of going hibernation mode on our bodies. And it is easy to lose motivation because you don't have as much daylight to like do things you love, especially if you're a gardener. But I think that it's good to be aware of these sorts of challenges and to have conversations around them. I know that there's a lot of people out there that I've met through farming and gardening who have found a lot of peace and solace mentally and emotionally working with land and working with plants and being part of something bigger. It also allows you to get really engaged with your community in terms of if you don't have the land space to get involved in community gardens or wherever. And I think staying motivated, because it's something that I struggle with too, you guys, is like staying motivated during extreme temperatures. You know, when there's not a lot for me to do outside and I can't get my hands in the dirt as often, although I'm doing brush clearing, so it's not as big of a deal in the winter for me. But yeah, in general, like, it's something that I think is worth having a conversation around and talking about, and really just realizing that as we have that conversation, that you're not alone in that struggle, that that's something that a lot of us struggle with, to not feel motivated, to, you know, want to try and fill that void with something else, whether it be food or drugs or alcohol or whatever. But finding ways for us to connect on a deeper level as a community, environments, and also embracing that downtime and allowing ourselves it, and not feeling guilty about it, and not feeling like we need to hide stuff. So we're going to dig into that more in the long run, because I think that it's a much a conversation that needs to be had frequently. I think that it's necessary. If you've poked around, I'm not sure that this is still going. If you've poked around on YouTube, if you've ever like searched my name here, then you may have seen I gave a I read a talk at a conference, unconference, called several years ago, that really kind of got into like the mental health aspects of gardening. And while I've had people ask for me to shy away from discussing that, I do think that it's very important for us to address it and, you know, feel safe talking about it, and know that like you're not the only one that's dealing with that. You're not the only one that's dealing with losing motivation. You're not the only one that's dealing with using appetite in order to feel like you have some amount of control or that you're out of control. So it is a conversation that we need to have a lot longer term. But that's where I'm going to leave that today. Just know that you're not alone. We're all in this together. This is why I like having this space, is so that we can have these sorts of conversations, not just about what we're trying to accomplish in the gardens, but also what we're trying to accomplish just in life in general, because we're all on the same journey. So thank you so much for everyone joining me today. I really had a great time talking with you. I missed you guys so much last week. I'm going to get together this email list so that we can try and get on the same communication page, and it's easier to share pictures and ideas and keep these conversations going throughout the week when we're not doing the live stream. But yeah, I go back through and I read all of these comments and try to you know, just write down stuff for next week. We'll see what the Wi-Fi speed is like at my grandpa's house, and if it's good, then we'll do one in front of whatever background I can find. If it's not, then move it out, but I have videos I'm working on editing and whatnot right now, and so there will be new content. So please stick around, hit that subscribe button, and ding that bell if you haven't already. Follow me on Instagram at FlavorKit. That's where I'm sharing probably the most stuff, but there's lots of articles on Facebook too, so this is why we need a Discord channel or something along those lines. Any tech people that are really savvy and understand how to make all of this stuff work, please reach out and get in contact with me. Whatever way that you can find, there's lots of different ways, but I do check message requests across platforms. I'm just not able to answer all of the obvious reasons. So yeah, thank you so much for joining today, you guys. P.O. Box info, if you're looking for that, is on the community tab here. And until next time, happy gardening. Okay, thanks guys, bye. Boop. Yes, I'm sure. Okay.